Welcome. I'm Kim Stodchill with Stodchill College Consulting, and this is a monthly edition of a Zoom call that I host every month. I was doing it weekly for a while when the pandemic first started, but just due to my own busyness, had to slow it down a little bit. But I'm fortunate, as always, to be joined by people who know even more than I do about college admissions, and I'm going to let the two of them introduce themselves, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. So Mitch, Samantha, take it away, please.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mitch Arnett, and I am one of the Senior Assistant Directors at Miami University. Miami University is based in Oxford, Ohio.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Spezial. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions here at the University of Tampa and the Director of Virtual Recruitment. I'm here at the University of Tampa in Tampa, Florida.
And again, thank you all for being here. So I'm actually very excited about this activity that we're going to do today. We are going to actually put you participants in the seat of the admissions committee today and let you all in on making the decisions for our 4 fictitious candidates that that Samantha and Mitch are going to present to you. This is an abbreviated version of what would normally happen in the admissions room. You're not actually going to see a full 6 or 10 page application, and we're not going to read essays today just because of the time constraints we have, but it will give you hopefully a little insight into some of the conversations, some of the sort of less tangible characteristics that we're looking at and factors that go into making decisions. Maybe it will give you an appreciation for how difficult it can be sometimes to do this work that we do. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and show you information about our 4 candidates that we're looking at today. And so here's what we have. This is what we call a candidate review form. And I'm going to just hand it over then back to Mitch and Samantha, and you all let me know how I need to adjust the screen as you're reading through things and presenting this to our committee. But pay attention, everybody, because we're going to ask you to vote on this and decide who you're admitting at the end of all of it.
All right. I guess I'll go alphabetical order. So Mrs. Stodchill wanted us to make bring up certain points in the application process. First of all, how we reach admission decisions. I imagine that a lot of the colleges your students are applying to are probably going to be applying to colleges like Miami and University of Tampa that have more of a holistic review approach, and that's definitely the goal of this session as well. So with holistic review, we look at many different factors in the application process. There are some colleges out there that have what we call a sliding scale, probably a little less common. I have seen it in the University of Texas system. Not too familiar with others out there, but basically if you have a certain GPA, test score, and or class rank, then you're automatically admitted with certain credentials and so forth. There are also some colleges that have open admission. So if you were to apply to that college, you're just automatically admitted. So there isn't much of a thorough review process like we're going to be doing today. So the first thing that I would like to note, and then I'll let Samantha kind of jump to the next topic. But the first one that I want to talk about is the high school profile. There are many different high schools out there. So at Miami, we do receive roughly 30,000 applications every year, and we have roughly 4,200 different high schools represented in the pool. So that's 4,200 different transcripts, 4,200 different formats of the transcripts, GPA scales. Some high schools weight their grades, some don't weight their grades. And you'll see that here in the academic section that Mrs. Stodchill included both the weighted and unweighted GPAs. So we'll get into that here a little bit. But the profile is really the college rep's chance to get to know the quality of the high school. A lot of you may have never seen your students' high school profiles. It's usually accessible on their websites. So if you just want to go to, Providence Day or Myers Park or whatever high school your student attends, just go to their homepage, and under their academics section or guidance office section, you should be able to see what the profile looks like. It's usually 1 to 4 pages or so. It includes basic information of the location, the enrollment size, what percentage of students are going to 2-year schools, 4-year schools, the military. It's going to provide information about the grading scales, how many APs, honors, college prep courses are available. Sometimes profiles also include average ACT, SAT information, AP exams, and so forth. And then I've also seen some profiles list where the students have applied to in the past, and also what colleges they've been accepted to. So the profile is the college rep's place to gather a lot of information about the school. We do reference it quite a bit if we need clarification on a GPA scale and so forth.
Thank you, Mitch, for that introduction. And just as Mitch was talking, here at the University of Tampa, we do take the holistic approach, same as Miami University. Next thing I want to talk about is just the GPAs that you see for all of our prospective students applying. You can see that an unweighted GPA and a weighted GPA are both listed on this document that was compiled for us. I can speak for the University of Tampa as well as another public university that I used to work for, in the sense that it varies from school to school on how GPAs are handled. Some schools will just look at the weighted GPA and take that into account for a decision to be made, or also just the unweighted GPA and take that into account for a decision to be made. The difference between an unweighted and weighted GPA. A weighted GPA will show the course rigor that students are taking. So APs, IBs, and dual enrollments could be enhanced in a weighted GPA, where unweighted, everything is weighted the same exact way, no matter what type of course rigor that you are taking. And we find that out in the high school profile as well. So tying back to what Mitch was talking about. Here at the University of Tampa, we actually recalculate every student's GPA. Here at the university, we have all 50 states represented and 132 different countries represented. So this is how we feel that we can level the playing field for all students when they are applying to the university. So I know the student, Erica, doesn't have an unweighted GPA even listed, which is totally fine, because again, we're going to take that official high school transcript that we get from the independent day school, and we are going to recalculate that once it is in our system.
I'd also like to touch on the GPA, since colleges do things very differently. So Samantha mentioned that University of Tampa recalculates GPAs. This is a really good question to ask the college reps when you see them at college fairs or when they come into your high schools for visits, is to ask, what GPA are you considering? Are you taking it directly from the transcript and using it from the transcript, or are you going to recalculate it? So I'll say what Miami does. I've been with Miami for 10 years, and we've always used the GPA that's on the transcript. But with the pandemic, it's kind of a domino effect. So with the pandemic, we decided to go test optional. So we don't require the ACT and SAT this year, but we want to keep our merit scholarship grid. So the merit scholarship grid has a column for, okay, if you have this test score, this GPA, rigor coursework, you're going to get X scholarship. But since we don't have that column for test scores, we needed to put everyone on an even playing field. So for the first time in my 10 years, we are recalculating GPAs, just like Samantha said, to put everyone on an even playing field, to make it standardized, because we no longer have that standardized test score to consider for all of our students. Roughly only half of our students are actually submitting test scores this year, what we're finding. Okay, so I am supposed to talk about class rank. I am finding that a lot of high schools are shying away from reporting class rank. My first year at Miami in 2009, we did factor class rank if the high school presented those data to us. But that was actually the only year that I worked at Miami with class rank. Shortly afterward, we eliminated the whole class rank consideration. And I'm finding that's the trend with a lot of colleges, and even high schools in general are just providing class rank less common, because let's say you go to a really small high school and you don't have, above a 4-point or at a 4-point scale, your rank is going to drop significantly if you don't have many students in that class.
And just to piggyback off of Mitch, I think we're going to be doing that a lot. But here at the University of Tampa, we do not take into consideration class rank at all. Again, with the large pool of students from all across the country and world, it's very not similar across the board. Not everyone reports class rank like Mitch stated. Next up, I just wanted to talk about the different choices of majors that are indicated on this document. They are all over the board, all different types of majors for each student, which is awesome to see. Something to ask every university rep that your student is applying to is if they are considering majors when making a decision on the file. Again, I can speak for the University of Tampa. We do not take that into account when students are applying. When students apply to the University of Tampa, they apply to the school as a whole. So they're able to move their majors around if needed. They're not applying to one specific college. So for example, the College of Business, and not able to move into the College of Natural and Health Sciences. But like I stated, I worked for a public university in the past, and that is something that they did do. So you just have to make sure that it varies from school to school. So just make sure that you know how each school is handling that in their application process.
Miami is a public school. We're also a liberal arts school, which a lot of people don't know. Very similar to University of Tampa, we read applications without paying attention to their majors. So we admit students to the university overall in general. We do have a few programs that have additional admission requirements on top of them. So these are great questions to ask the college reps is how are you admitting students? Is it to the university? Is it by a division and so forth? So I can say for these candidates here, Kim, if you want to, scroll over the major section, that way they can see what these students are interested. Yeah, so you see public health policy, pre-law, journalism, communication, computer engineering, education, and social policy. So yeah, a lot of diversity with interest here. There are some colleges out there that do consider the major. You have to apply directly to maybe the College of Engineering or the School of Business and so forth. At Miami, even though we're admitting students overall in general, we do have additional admission requirements on top of the general ones. So students have to apply for direct admission into nursing, all 8 business majors, and then thirdly are creative arts majors. Creative arts is because it requires a portfolio or audition. So that's how it works at Miami. And then, okay, so we talked about the majors. My section is talking about curriculum choices. This is a big one. So if you want to see here, it's the very bottom part of academics. Yep. So you'll see that students have a lot of different options of the level of courses that they're wanting to take. This is very important for colleges. Because a GPA alone doesn't really tell us too much unless we really have a chance to look at where the student is going to high school to earn that GPA, because it's like apples to oranges. High schools are so different. Some high schools are stronger than others. Some students attend private high schools, maybe religious institutions, public schools, and so forth. And like we talked about before, some of the high schools are applying weight to their grades and so forth. So we are paying very close attention to the level of the coursework. So at Miami, what we're going to do is we break it down by subject area when we're looking at academics, and we are looking for the students' highest level of potential or proficiency. So I'll just start and talk about English, for example. So the state of Ohio and Miami, we require 4 units of English. So if a student just took, maybe creative writing, English 10, English 11, maybe British literature, and that's it. Let's just say all college prep courses, great. You've met the minimum requirements. You're kind of going to be set here at, you've met the basic minimum requirements. But if you take an honors English class, you're going to be considered a little bit more favorably because you're going a step above the college prep level. And then a step above honors would be AP. We view AP the same as a college level course. So if you were to do a dual enrollment course, which is when you are taking a college course at your high school and getting college credit for it. So we would view those the same. You'll see also here that Henry is an IB diploma candidate. We evaluate IB the same as AP if it's the higher level. So if it's a standard level at Miami is going to be viewed the same as an honors course. So you can see that taking into context of the course rigor is very important for Miami and also for the exercise today. Let me see if there's anything else. Samantha, anything else you think we should add about the course rigor and curriculum?
Not for the application process. I think that you absolutely nailed it on the head. I think just something to also consider is credits that are transferring in for students, but of course that is after applications are read. But again, Mitch, I think you did great. So thank you. I appreciate that. Do you mind scrolling down just a little bit to have the activities in the screen?
Sure.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, my Zoom keeps like flipping where everyone's face is. Okay, so next up, I just want to talk a little bit about extracurricular activities that are listed on applications. So this is usually it's through your application process. So the Common App asks for extracurricular activities as well as the coalition and we have our own institutional application that asks too. I have found that students also like to submit their resumes with additional information just so our evaluation board here at the university can take a look at that. So totally a personal preference on how a student does that, but you can see a great description of each student's extracurricular activities. And these are they're all very involved with different things, which is awesome to see. Again, I can speak for the University of Tampa that we look for a well-rounded student. So the fact that this first student, I'm blanking on their name, but all the way on the left column, Michelle, is working a lot, also is playing soccer, and she was in strong honors and AP curriculum. So that is a well-rounded student that we're seeing. You can also see that another student is working with a nonprofit and tutoring elementary school students. So another very well-rounded student. They're not focusing solely on one thing, but really putting themselves out there. And the student, the second student in, is showing that he primarily focuses on school, but then in the summer when they have time to not focus on school, that he is still spending his time in the community, helping out, so on and so forth. So that's how we look at extracurricular activities here at the University of Tampa.
All right. A lot of students will ask me, what are some ways that I can really stand out in the application process? I usually share with students that the majority of your application is kind of out of your control, in the sense that you can't really change too much. You know, you can't really change what your test score is. You know, you've already sat for your ACT, SAT. You can't go back and say, oh, I wish that were really higher. I mean, you can, of course, prepare for it and so forth. But with that comes a lot of limitations. You also can't really change your cumulative GPA at the time of apply. You know, you've already earned the grades that you have. You've already signed up for the classes. You've already taken the classes. You can definitely think about the courses that you're about to take. And also your activities are kind of already set in stone as well. You know, you've already had those experiences and you're going to list them all. So when students ask, what are some ways I can really stand out? It's really the essay. So that's the very bottom part of this grid here. You can see that Mrs. Stodchill included some information about the quality of the essays. With limited time today, we don't have the time to actually read their essays and evaluate them. But I did come today with some notes, and I'm sure Samantha has some additional things to add as well of some advice with the essays. First and foremost, just know that there are several different essay prompts out there. So Miami, we only use the Common application. And I know that this is something that you're going to become a little bit more familiar with as your students apply for admission. So on the Common application, there are several essay prompts, one of them being the topic of choice. I usually recommend students sort of shy away from that, just because I think a lot of students would start to ramble a little bit and maybe struggle with identifying a cohesive topic. So identify a topic that's going to be important for the students. It's going to help the students stand out. Make sure that the students really answer the questions. So take some thought, be creative, because we are real people. You know, we are not robots reading these application essays. So it's really important to stand out among the bunch. I also recommend students sort of write their essays in sort of like a newspaper format, in the sense that right away you want to capture our attention. You know, what's the lead? We want to know what the topic is. Make sure you stick with the topic the entire way through, and wrap up with a very nice ending. Of course, check for grammar, proofreading your essays. Make sure you edit them as well. I'm sure you have English, English teachers, parents, neighbors, siblings, many people to read your essay and give some feedback on all that. Your essay should really be a snapshot of your life. So, we don't have a chance to get to know a lot of our applicants, but after reading the essays, we want to have the ability to have a better glimpse of getting to know that person beyond just the paper, if that makes sense. There are some other additional essays that colleges might require. So like I said, Miami, we just require the common application, and that's really it. We don't have any additional application essays for scholarships or anything like that. We do have an additional essay for the honors programs. So you might see some of these additional programs requiring additional essays. When I was in grad school, I worked in the admission office at Northwestern, and there we had an additional essay beyond the Common App, and it was just, why do you want to go to Northwestern? Kind of a short answer reply. You might see some colleges have that question. What about this university attracted you to the school? Why do you want to apply? I think a lot of you might be surprised to hear one of the biggest replies was kind of the cheesy reply of, as soon as I step foot on campus, I don't know, I would just recommend going above and beyond kind of like what we expect to hear in that thing, and then we also got a lot of replies from students saying they wanted to go to Northwestern because they looked really good in purple. Not the most creative reply. Maybe when you went to campus, you met with a faculty member, maybe you discussed a certain research opportunity that's going to draw you to that university. Maybe it's a certain study abroad program, or it's a major that it's not too common. Maybe it's a focus on undergraduate teaching like you get at Miami, size, location, religious affiliation, extracurricular opportunities at that university, student life, and so forth. So just be really mindful if you have to answer the questions, why do you want to apply and attend that specific university? So and a lot of times this can kind of make or break the decision, especially students who are right on the bubble. So for example, you'll see that Michelle, just looking at her personal experiences, I'm sure that she has quite a life that she's lived already. Her parents are widowed. She is working a lot. Her mom went to this university. So I think this would be a really good essay to read. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind when we're looking at these. Anything else to add, Samantha?
No, I think, again, you definitely hit all of my points. I think the thing to drive home is that we are humans reading these essays, and there's however many applications coming through the system. So if your student has an essay that stands out, you always want to have an essay and that hook at the beginning of your essay to make you stand out from the crowd. So I think that, yeah, everything that you said was great. We also follow the Common App prompts. So we read the same essay a few times in different wording, and again, make sure that you're standing out. And another good thing is if students are going to talk about different difficulties that they've had throughout their life, always try and end it on a positive note, or how you overcame that difficulty, or where you are now because you went through this difficult time in your life. It's always a tip that I give to my students who are applying. Last but not least, I just want to talk about the different personal characteristics that are listed at the bottom. So Mitch hinted about Michelle's parents who are widowed, the legacy of her mom attending the university, and then you can see the others across the board. Here at the University of Tampa, we are blind to all of that. So we don't take into account anything based off of their gender, their parents, or anything like that. The disciplinary actions we do look at, and we we always fall into the problem where students don't list that they have a disciplinary action on their application, and then it's mentioned in a letter of recommendation or somewhere hinted in an essay, and then that's where it becomes a problem, where we have to reach out and get a full statement from the student as to why it wasn't mentioned, or so on and so forth. So if this student mentioned that in 9th grade, he was suspended for 2 days having a beer at a football game, of course, our VP is going to look at it, but again, it's better for you to mention these things instead of trying to hide it from the university, because we do find out in different ways. So definitely just always be straightforward. But again, we're completely blind to everything, even the legacy aspect of it. We do have legacy scholarships at the University of Tampa. So that's something that students would be able to apply for. But besides that, we don't really take into consideration any of those characteristics.
We do pay attention to some of them. It's not really going to make too much impact on the decision, though. We do ask for, so Miami's named after the Miami tribe. We do ask for students to indicate whether or not they are part of the Miami tribe. That might be a factor in consideration. We do ask for legacy. We consider legacy for parents, step-parents, or siblings. We don't really count grandparents as immediate legacy. It's not really going to make too much of an impact on the decision. It's more so for tracking purposes. We just would like to know, how many legacy do we have in the pool? But I think a factor such as maybe a parent is widowed, or maybe a student went through a really nasty divorce. These are things that we could definitely consider because it could negatively impact students' grades and credentials and so forth. Other factors like race, religion, ethnicity, religion, it's all asked on the Common App, and it's more so for tracking purposes. I think, like Samantha said, it's not really going to make or break decisions for us. Geographic diversity is really important to Miami. We like Samantha said, they have students from all across the world, just like Miami. So in our student body, we represent all 50 states, DC, roughly 90 countries. So our students are coming from all across the globe. And we really do like to emphasize having a great embodiment of different students coming from many different backgrounds and cultures, which I imagine is the interest of most four-year institutions out there. So Kim, I think we kind of hit all the major points here. Did you want to talk about each of the candidates now, or what was sort of your approach here?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go ahead and start trying to make some decisions. Just so the audience knows, our goal today is going to be, you're actually going to answer a poll for us here at the end of this, and you're going to vote to admit 2 people, deny 1 person, and add 1 person to the wait list. Can one of you just touch on quickly describing what a wait list is, in case the audience isn't quite as familiar with that?
Of course. So again, every university handles wait lists differently. So I'll speak of that for the University of Tampa. We start our wait list in usually February of every year. And the way that our wait list works is if we have met our goal for enrollment for the upcoming fall, we then start waitlisting students. So if students are not enrolling, then we can pull from the wait list and put them in for that upcoming class. If our students are waitlisted here at the University of Tampa, they are automatically in for that following spring. So for this upcoming fall of 2021, if students start getting waitlisted, they are accepted for spring 2022. So they're able to still attend the University of Tampa just a semester later, which is still a great opportunity. They can do community college classes at home for that first semester, then come for the second. But again, that's the basic of a waitlist. I don't know if Miami handles waitlists any differently, but again, they usually start in the beginning of February here for the University of Tampa.
Yeah, pretty much the same setup at Miami with how the waitlist works. Our timeline is a little bit different. So our waitlist, we will announce students if they are going to be put on the waitlist March 15th. So that's kind of the timeline for us. And with the dates, this has changed a little bit with NACAC, the National Association of College Admission Counselors. And Kim can talk about that a little bit later in a different session, I'm sure, about how our bylaws have changed the past year or two. It's really shaken things up. Historically, students have until May 1st to decide where they're going to college. And then colleges have the ability to hold a wait list until August 1st. So we usually don't like to wait that long. It's usually maybe June or so that I've seen we would offer students admission from the wait list. And that could be, maybe they got maybe a student, maybe, sorry. So let's say Miami was their second choice. They didn't get into the first choice school for admission. So they were placed on that school's wait list, and then they admitted that student. And that student said, okay, I want to go to that university, cancel that Miami, and then we could bring in a student from our wait list. So it's kind of this like shuffle. It's kind of a domino effect, May, June, kind of that time frame. But like I said, I've never really seen us go to a wait list as late as August. So
That's great. All right, so yes, let's start having a conversation and making a decision about these students.
And then Kim, did they get the profile from this fake university?
Oh, no, but I could pull it up for us. Let's share that. Bear with me 1 minute here. Here, I'll stop sharing for a minute so it's not all. Sorry, bear with me just 1 minute. It's time to clean out some of my files and make things easier to find.
Kim, while you're looking that up, will there be an opportunity for us to ask questions?
Absolutely. And in fact, if you have anything you want to ask, I've got this up, but you can fire away at any point. I should have said that at the beginning, that as we go through this, anytime you have a question, feel free to just unmute yourself and fire away and let us know. So
I'll wait until after the exercise.
Okay. And then
Can
let me
ask a question in advance?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I was
Is
just
that-
saying to put something in the chat, but go ahead.
Oh, I just asked if we could ask questions in the chat.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Fire away.
So you guys said that you recalculate the averages. I was just curious if when you did that, you took into account all grades, or if you selected out just certain grades that you cared about, like, English and math, and, throughout basket weaving or something like that.
That's a great question.
At Miami, it's all grades. So we are actually having students include all their coursework and grades in this additional database called Self-Reported Academic Record. It's a process. It's something that we took a lot of time to think about whether or not we're going to require this additional process. The reason for it is because the Common Application does not recalculate grades when students enter their coursework in there. So we don't take out gym, art, any of those. I don't want to say non-academic because art is an academic, but some colleges might take out art and gym and so forth. But Miami, it's just whatever, everything.
Great question.
Same for UT, but we go through, we go off of their official high school transcript. So they have to send in their transcript instead of going off of the SRAR.
So how does that look if, for example, for extracurricular, someone took AP classes or classes that would be deemed harder at whatever school they're at, as versus someone who took really what might be considered easier extracurriculars that would really raise their average?
So for us, a college prep course, so it could be, Western literature, or it could be Spanish 3. Those are all college prep courses. So an A is a 4-point, B is the 3-point, and so forth. And then if students take honors courses, it's an additional 0.5 point. And then APs are a full point. APs and then IB is only viewed an additional point if it's higher level. And then for dual enrollment, it's also an additional point. Now, if students are doing post-secondary work where they're physically leaving their high school to go to a college or university, we would count 1 semester or 2 quarters at that university the same as a full year of AP or dual enrollment. which dual enrollment is taught at the high school.
All right.
I'm going to be completely transparent for the University of Tampa. We have an evaluation board here at the university, and they are the ones who do the full recalculation. So I do not know exactly what their scale is, but yes, so I don't fully read the applications. I'm the person in between the student and the eval board, and the eval board does all of their the decisions on file.
Got it. All right, let me share again and show you the university's profile there. They usually look much nicer than this, but for the purposes of our exercise, it gets the point across.
Yeah, so I think just some things I'd like to highlight, just that way you can get a better idea of the college that we are representing. Of course, this is fantastic. It's not a real school, but it's located in this fantasy land of Sunbury Port, Massachusetts. Very heavy into research, a lot of great traditions. Undergraduate teaching is of the utmost known, probably most known for business, medicine, engineering. The mission, I think, yeah. It's an old school. It's been around for, almost 200 years. Private school, looks like a medium-sized university. So just over 6,000 undergraduate students, liberal arts, 2,000 graduate students. This actually sounds like Miami in terms of the geographic diversity. We have students coming from all over the states, all over the world. Looks like campus housing is very big. And nice small classes, 15:1 is the student to teacher ratio. Let's see here, Division I with athletics. Samantha, you want to take over?
Yeah, of course. So you can see what their last year's class looked like. So they had around 19,000 students apply, 7,000 were admit. And then you can see the total enrolled students. So they're bringing in a class around 2,000, which is very close to the University of Tampa's here. A few different deadlines, and that's just something that I would like to point out. Early action and regular decision. So they are all non-binding. Yeah, non-binding decisions. So early action was their November 15th, which is great. So again, it's non-binding. If they get accepted during that time, students are not required to attend. For their admitted student profile, this is definitely something that we will look at when we're looking at the 4 students that are that we're evaluating today. So it seems like PSU does the same thing at like the University of Tampa. They recalculate on a 4.0 scale, and the average, or the mid 50, I'm sorry, is a 3.39 and to a 3.38. Again, something to definitely consider. The mid 50% of the SAT 1380 to 1480, and ACT 29 to 32. And then you can see the required documents. This does change from college to college. I know Mitch was speaking earlier of another university that required 2 essays. So just something to be aware of, but they do need the common application and essay, as well as writing supplement. So 2 essays needed. The school report, which we did receive, as well as the official SAT or ACTs. It's in a holistic review, which is awesome, because that's, again, how Miami University and University of Tampa does. Our admissions, we look at everything that the student submits. Sorry, I didn't see this before, so I'm reading while we're all reading. I couldn't get into the Google Doc. So something to definitely take into account is that last line, or the second to last line, where it says the PSU admissions committee is need aware. So what this takes into account is the FAFSA. So students are required to submit a FAFSA here at the University of Tampa, and it provides an estimated family contribution. So the amount of money that students should be able to contribute to their schooling based off of what the government says. So that's something to definitely look at for all colleges and universities. Again, it is different from university to university. And then something great is to note that they automatically consider students for academic scholarships. So again, varies from university to university. It could be a separate application at some universities. Mitch, do you want to take it back over?
Yeah, something that I want to note here is the super scores. So it's kind of there in the middle of the paragraph. So PSU super scores, test scores. Some of you parents and students might know what that means. Some of you might not. I'm not sure if Mrs. Stotchell covered that yet or not with you all. Miami does super score the ACT and SAT, but we don't factor in the writing section. So let's say you do really well in math, but then you bomb your reading. But then you go to take the test again and you do just the opposite. So what some colleges will do is they can pull out those subscores and give a new average composite. And we do round up for 0.5 and higher, which is pretty nice. And we have seen that super scoring can really help the student in regard to admission decisions, and then also especially for scholarships. So like PSU, students are automatically considered for scholarships, same at Miami, but we do have an honors program that requires an additional essay. There's a scholarship attached with that. We also have a full ride scholarship, and that is the same application and same essay for the other honors program, but otherwise the merit grid is automatic. Tuition and financial aid here, you'll see PSU requires a FAFSA and CSS profile. To be honest, I don't even really know what the CSS does. I think it's more for private schools is my understanding. Miami has never considered it. We are a public school. So, but I think it's great that they do meet full need. So if you want to point that out, Kim, is whatever the FAFSA and CSS profile, whatever the results are, the university has enough funding to make sure that the students don't have to pay to attend that university. All right.
Excellent.
And I think that's
I'll
it.
just add real quick about the CSS profile is that in a nutshell, it asks for a lot of the same information as the FAFSA, but takes into account some different aspects of families' income and assets and savings and things like that, just to allow the institution itself to determine more of what their own money they will give. That's why it's not tied to the FAFSA. FAFSA is federal money. CSS profile tends to work with a university's own source of private funding that they might use for scholarships and aid. All right, ready to make some decisions? So let's go back to the candidates.
Which, by the way, I think it's kind of hard because you'll kind of see here. So, for example, you'll look at Henry or let me see here. What was I going to say? Michelle, she has, the lowest GPA of the four, but her ACT and SAT are pretty good. I mean, they're in the middle 50. Are they in the middle 50? Let me go back to this and see.
Yeah, her SAT definitely is.
Yeah. But then you have to factor in, I think one of her parents died and she's working how many hours at a fast food restaurant. And so, yeah, I think Kim threw in some curveballs here.
Intentionally.
Yeah. Just so you, these decisions are pretty tricky to make. So at Miami, academics are most important. So we care about the course rigor. Like I said, the course rigor, where students go to high school. So Michelle has strong honors, AP curriculum, attending a private Catholic high school. GPA is not so good. James has a lot of honors and a few APs in 11th and 12th grade. Is attending a public school with also an ACT that fits in the middle 50%. Henry also has a stellar GPA, great test score as well, and is an IB Diploma Candidate. And then Erica has the highest GPA of everyone, weighted GPA of everyone, and she also has the highest test scores. But she doesn't have any APs or IB courses. So, and this is something that we think we could identify from the profile. So of course, because of the exercise today, we do have limited time. You can't actually see the entire application. But for this at Miami, we do have what's called a reader dashboard. So we just have like one sheet that kind of has this information, just like quick data, quick facts. And on there, we can see just historical data from that school. It'll tell us how many APs, IBs are available at that school. That way, when we take a look at Erica, we can see, okay, well, you didn't take any APs. Are there APs available at your school? So maybe there aren't any available APs for her to take. Let's say, for example, there are 20 AP classes available. So this might throw in some question, maybe why Erica didn't challenge herself academically. And this is where we would be able to look at the transcript to see, maybe she took Spanish 1 and 2 and then stopped, versus maybe one of her friends did Spanish 1, 2, 3 AP Spanish and is getting a 3.8 GPA. So the GPA might be a little bit lower, because that student challenged him or herself a little bit more compared to Erica. So this is where it gets really tricky, to kind of see what exactly are you doing to earn the GPA that you are.
Yeah, you definitely threw a lot of curveballs in here at us. I think, again, this is a great representation of 4 students where it's a tricky decision on what's going to happen. You have to take into account a lot of different things. Again, with the time constraint, it makes it even more difficult because you don't get the full profile of everything. So yeah, it's definitely a tricky decision.
Well, I say, unless there's audience questions, I say we go ahead and do the vote, and then maybe we follow up with audience questions after that. So I'll stop sharing. And again, we know that this is in a very abbreviated version, but we'd love to have you vote in the poll here. Take a minute to look at, answer for each student what your decision would be.
Do you want Samantha and I to vote too now, or just hold on?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you want us to vote too, or just hold on?
Why don't you hold on and you share yours at the end as we review
Okay.
the decision.
Can we see the list again? I didn't memorize it before you asked.
Sure. Let me,
Sorry.
that's okay. There we go. And you should still be able to access the poll as this is being shared. If I don't cover it up. Clearly tough decisions to be made.
Yeah, and then also you can see, some of the curveballs in here, with Michelle. Something else that you may not have noticed right away, is that she's being recruited by several schools. So that might be a factor, with athletic recruitment. I'm assuming it's athletics.
Yes.
It could, okay, I'll say, because it could be creative arts recruitment. Maybe the orchestra needs a really good violinist or something. So that might put a thumb on the scale for students. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. And then something that we didn't talk about too much was Henry's disciplinary issue. Was he was caught drinking beer in 9th grade at a football game.
Well, give it another minute for the votes. I'll say this, and you all, Samantha and Mitch, correct me if you think differently, but my experience in my years in the schools as a counselor was often that 2 things. One was that taken into consideration what happened with Henry, the fact that it happened in 9th grade, and hopefully we're not reporting it, that nothing else then has happened. And that's the growth period that he experienced, and he's able to sort of overcome that. And that this was not something that really endangered other people. I think we get red flags more often if it's something that feels dangerous or, puts other people in harm's way. But oftentimes my experience was the point about being forthcoming, telling about it early on in the process, and just explaining sort of what happened. And especially if it was something early in your high school career, I rarely have had students held back or not admitted as a result of that. All right, anybody else want to cast a vote before we go ahead and wrap it up? Just to last minute. Okay, So we'll stop sharing. I'll stop the poll. So out of the folks who voted, let's see, we've got, well, the overwhelming admit is for Henry. And then let me just share the results so you all can see that. Then Michelle comes in at a close second with the 5 votes for being admitted. James is interesting because there's a tie on whether or not to admit him or waitlist him, but because the other 2 have a higher percentage of admit, they would be admitted. And then Erica would be offered a spot on the wait list, most likely, although she and James were both at 3 votes for that. So again, varying levels of decisions across the board here. So Samantha and Mitch, let us know in the last few minutes here how you would have voted.
Yeah, well, I just want to mention that normally it wouldn't be like this in the room.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, and I feel like I know these students quite well. And also I kind of feel like I work at PSU because I've done this same case study quite a bit over the years. But it's always interesting to see every time I do one of these, how different the audience is. Sometimes students are like, we absolutely need to deny Henry, he drank beer and, but okay, that was 3 years ago. And like Kim said, he grew from it, no issues since then. He's a good guy. So I don't know, it's so interesting. But yeah, it would never really come down to, okay, we have 4 students and we only have like 2 seats. If we find that a student is admissible, we'll probably admit the students. But of course, we do have to consider we only have so many seats, beds, faculty, staff. So that's kind of how it works. But if we want to admit 1 more student, it's not going to be that big of a deal, really, especially at a school that's the size of Miami versus some of my colleagues work at really small liberal arts schools, and they pay very close attention to confirmation, enrollments, and so forth. I mean, yes, we of course pay attention to it, but if we have 10 students that withdraw over the summertime, it's like, okay, that really stinks. We're unfortunate. We're very sad to leave them, but it's not really going to affect our enrollment goals too much. So to be honest, I don't have all the information that I need to make a decision. But if I were forced to make a decision and was working at Miami with these 4 students, I would admit them all. Because we would be concerned with Michelle's GPA though, but I think we could consider her strong attention to her work life and also her personal life outside school. So that's when we would look at her essay and letter of reference. But if you were to force me to make a decision, Michelle, I would probably waitlist her because we would be concerned with that GPA. James, I would probably admit him. Henry, I would deny him. And then Erica, I would admit her. But that's only if you forced me to make a decision today.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so here at the University of Tampa, they would all be admitted as well. They're very well-rounded students. So again, we are looking at those extra things that they're doing outside of just the school, as well as, they're just, it's a great group of students too, because they all have different interests too. So they would all fit in very well at UT. Again, if I was forced to make a decision, Henry, I would admit, James, I would have waitlisted. Michelle, I would have admitted, as well as Erica. Or
you have to deny one. Come on now. You have to be mean to
I
one.
have to deny. I'll deny James.
Okay, there we go. All right. Well, again, to the audience, I do hope you know that this is the big 30,000-foot view of what this process really entails. But I hope that what this abbreviated version does is gives you just some insight into, again, factors that you might not have considered that could be a part of your student's application process. And in general, just that there can be some tough decisions being made. I think Mitch makes a great point, depending on the size of the university, and even in, as a medium-sized university at Tampa as well, like they can admit all of those people. But if we're talking about a Washington and Lee or a Davidson, perhaps, where it is so small and you really are working with a tight constraint of numbers, you might find that there are tighter decisions that are being made when it comes to that. So let's go to a few questions. I know we're a little tight on time now, but let's say, one of the participants, can you say why they chose to deny? and again, we force you to pick somebody that you would deny. So it's kind of a tough one to maybe do that.
It was tough, but I denied Henry because of the violation.
Yeah.
But that's again, he would have been admitted, I think.
I fell under pressure, so I just did someone. There's really no reason. Again, they would have all been admitted here. Henry makes a great point about him being with the violation, the disciplinary violation. I think that would be a red flag for some universities, but again, he would have been admitted here at the University of Tampa.
Sure. Okay, another question in the chat is, how will COVID impact admissions this year other than standardized testing, which we know has been paused and most schools are test optional this year, which would have been an entire another layer we would need another hour to do in this scenario. But in other words, are you seeing more applications because of gap years? Or are you seeing, I mean, I know in the state of Florida, the state system is seeing a reduction in applications given the testing problems that have been happening, but what are you all seeing with the impact of COVID?
So for fall 2020, we experienced a lot of students that wanted to defer their admission. We have roughly 400 students that decided to take their admission offers and come spring 2021 or fall 2021 instead. So we are going to have probably a larger class coming in for fall 2021, but it's not going to affect the admission decisions for current students in high school. We do have the capacity to hold those deferred students on campus. So don't fret too much about applying to Miami with difficulty of getting in for fall 2021. In fact, we're actually down 30% in applications, which is terrifying. I mean, we keep looking at application numbers, but it was kind of expected because we're not able to travel in the fall like we normally would and get the level of presence that we're usually used to out on the road.
So it's great that we have two different sides of the story here. So COVID, like you stated, testing is a huge thing that we have gone. We are test blind here at the university. We won't use test scores at all for a decision to be made or for merit-based awards. It's all based off of unweighted GPA. And this is the first year that we've ever done that. So contrary to Miami University, we've actually seen a huge increase in applications this year. But when our students were deferring from fall 2020, they were not able to defer for a full year. We did not give them an option to do a gap year. If they wanted to defer, they had to come for spring 2021. So if students decided that they wanted to come for fall 2021, they're back in our application pool and fighting for a spot just like as everyone else is. And most students are actually coming in as transfer students, so it's not affecting our high school numbers at all. But again, we are seeing more applications this year for the University of Tampa.
Got it. Let's go through. I've got 3 more questions in the chat, and if we can get through those, then we'll have to cut it off because we're at the hour mark. But so this next question, great question. So if you're the student family exploring at this point, is it appropriate to ask a school, what are you looking for in admissions that year? More men, more women, certain majors? I mean, can you ask those kinds of questions of your rep as you're going through the process of deciding where to apply?
Short answer for us, yes. I think it's okay.
Good for her too. Okay. I'll add real quickly in this process, the answer is often it depends, and it can vary. Every question could almost have a different answer depending on if we had a panel of 10 different representatives from 10 different schools. One is, you said students get admitted to the college in general. How do you then get into your major? And by admitting this way, do you not end up with uneven amounts of people versus the spaces for each major?
At Miami, roughly half of our students switch the major anyway. So we understand that when you're entering college at 19, you might be sold on becoming the next Dr. Gray. But after attending a semester, you're like, well, I don't know about the whole pre-med route. So we understand that a lot of students are shuffling anyway. So we actually really don't see it as too much of an issue with that shuffling. If students decide to go pre-med, we're kind of prepared and assuming that students will end up being pre-med the entire time, which is just the way it goes. Students come in thinking one thing, but for us, we really don't see it too much of an issue. The reason that we actually have way more interest in our business school than our other majors, and that's why we have the additional admission restriction. So it does get more competitive getting into Miami's business school compared to arts and science or engineering. So it just kind of depends on the school. So I'm sure Samantha has a different answer.
Yeah. Again, we see a lot of students change their major, and I was one of those students who changed her major when she was here at the university. So it's not a huge concern for us. Our most popular major is nursing here at the University of Tampa, and it's not a direct admit. So students will have to apply once they're in their sophomore year at the University of Tampa. So that's how we handle seats in a program, but that's the only major that you do have to apply to get into after you're accepted to the university as a whole.
Got it. Next question is, do all schools super score standardized tests? No, that's an easy one. And again, that's a question you can ask in the search process, is how they handle standardized testing. And it will vary. It can even vary between how they do ACT versus SAT and whether or not they super score. And then finally, if your child wants to complete a gap year, should they apply while they're still in high school or wait? How do you handle that process?
I'd say it's up to them. I mean, you can apply, and then if you know for sure that you want to attend that college, you can submit your deposit. The only risk that I see is maybe during the gap year, you change your mind. Really at that point, the only thing that you'd be out on is the deposit, which at Miami, it's $425. It's not refundable. So, I mean, it's your call if you're willing to forfeit that deposit and apply and go somewhere else. So for us, it doesn't really matter, but it's up to you.
So again, varies from school to school. Here at the University of Tampa, if you are choosing to do a gap year and you would like to have your acceptance honored for that following fall, you do have to write an appeal to our VP. And then it has to be approved. So it's a personal preference. If students want to apply and go through that process, we always say they can apply for the year or the semester that they're looking to start as well. Totally a personal option though.
Great, thank you. I'll just add quickly on that. With the students I work with most often are almost doing two parallel processes. They're still applying to college for the year that they plan to regularly attend. And then if they're considering the gap year, like Mitch said, they do it, and then they make a decision. If they're really excited about the school they've been admitted to, they decide whether or not to do the gap year at that point. Thank you all. This has been hopefully enlightening. It's always fun for me to do it, even though I've literally looked at these same cases multiple times over the years. It's fun just to see how each audience reacts and chooses. I did this with high schoolers over the weekend, and very different results from them. So it's interesting how they judge their own peers, I think, in this process. Next month, I'm not going to have any guests on, so it's going to be completely Q&A. So if any of you just have lingering questions that you want to ask on that day, I will be sure you know when that's happening, and we'll get a list together so we can answer those as we sort of head into the end of 2020, which hopefully brings a lot of great newness in the new year. And again, thank you to Mitch and Samantha. I really appreciate the help today. Thanks to all the participants for joining in, and I hope to see some of you all back here next month. And Mitch and Samantha, thanks again. Take care.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much.